And welcome to episode 72 of the DX Mentor, all about the ARL DXCC program. I'm Bill, AJ8B. Between the DX Mentor Facebook page, the weekly DX column in the Ohio Section Journal, the DX section of the week in This Week in Amateur Radio podcast, and the This Week in DX weekly YouTube episodes, I've received quite a few emails over the past months about a couple of topics. One of those topics is the ARL DXCC program. That's what we're going to talk about today. If this is the first time you're joining us, welcome. We have a back catalog covering many aspects of DX in both podcast and YouTube format. Please check us out. If you like what you find, please subscribe, like, and share to always be notified about upcoming events. Another way to keep in touch and to see what we're up to is via the DX Mentor Facebook page. I will be posting about upcoming podcasts as well as other DX events, so please follow us. You can check the show notes for any of the information that we discussed today. I would like to pass along a few comments that we've received regarding some past episodes. I received this about the Amelia Earhart episode. Quote, fantastic episode, almost journalistic. I've really enjoyed all of the previous ones, and I'm really looking forward to the future. Thank you again, end quote. Regarding the interview with Victor Alpha 3 MW, Mike, a listener commented, quote, love the show, thank you. P.S. You should do a sideshow on old computers. I loved hearing about the NORAD computer, end quote. Concerning last week's edition about QSLing, K6GAB sent me a comment saying, thanks for this. It was very interesting. Finally, I received this about the QRZ.com interview with KF8KI, quote, a fascinating insight into QRZ and Steve's other interests. Thank you all for doing this, end quote. As you can tell, I do read the comments and apply them where I can. Please keep your thoughts and suggestions coming. Our guests today are Mike, W0VTT, Bernie, W3UR, and Joe, W8GEX. In this episode, we will discuss all things regarding the ARRL DXCC program. Now, we did have this very same program 3 years ago, but I freshened it up a little bit and answered all of these emails. I thought it'd be great to publish it again. So let's get started. Welcome to the DX Mentor podcast. I'm Bill, AJ8B, and I'm being joined by three DX gurus, Joe Pater, W8GEX, Mike Cizik, W0VTT, and Bernie McClenny, W3UR. The purpose of today's podcast is to explain the DX program as it is presented and offered by the ARRL. In our first podcast, we talked about the thrill of DXing, the thrill of the hunt, the confirmation of it, and also of being the DX where people are working you. So today we're kind of going to delve into why do we do all this? What is the rewards? Who manages the program? What is the program? And the folks I have with us today are absolutely essential to the program and are key people in the program. So I know you'll have a lot to learn. And a lot of questions when we're done. And I look forward to having that at the next podcast so that we can address those. So what I'd like to do is go around a little bit. And if you give me just a quick 30-second intro about your experience in DXing, that would be great. And let's start with Joe Pater, W8GEX.
Well, thanks, Bill. I'm tickled to death to be part of this group today. Excuse me. I've been around since 1970. On 6 meters years ago when I started, I was just overwhelmed when I worked into the Caribbean on 6 meters and been a DXer ever since. I really, got hooked on this. Been on some major D expeditions and been on a lot of just one-man D expeditions. So I'm pretty much a DXer all the way.
Okay, Mike, W0VTT.
Okay, hello to everyone. I was first licensed in 75, but it took me a good dozen years before I discovered DXing. I screwed around with a lot of other things. I've been on a grand total of 1 D expedition. I went to Pitcairn Island 3 years ago with VP6R. I'm a keen student of DX history. I enjoy looking at the history of the DXCC program. I'm a DXCC card checker, and I'm a member of the DX Advisory Committee for the Dakota Division.
And Mike, just real quick, what is the role that you have with the advisory committee? What kind of things does the committee do?
we look at different aspects of the DXCC program. Occasionally we'll get tasked by the ARRL Board of Directors looking at things they might want to change, things they could improve on the program. We also can accept tasks from outside of the league. If a number of DXers say, hey, we should make this change to the DXCC program, we can look at that as well, and we make recommendations to the Board of Directors, and then they decide whether or not to follow our recommendations.
Okay, great. And last but certainly not least is Bernie, W3UR.
Good afternoon. I was first licensed in 1977. My first DX contact was KZ5EK in the Canal Zone. And I immediately became addicted to DXing. I got DXCC as a novice. I was, I believe, the second novice to get DXCC, followed by W4ZV, Bill Tippett. I was the youngest person, I believe, to get on the DXCC Honor Roll. That's the bottom of the ladder at age 27. I've been on several DXpeditions, 2 all-time new ones, East Timor and Palestine. I started writing the Daily DX in 1997, the Weekly DX in 2000. I write the House DX column for QST Magazine since September 1999. And yeah, I think that's pretty much it for now.
Okay. I have been licensed since 71, so I was a little bit of a kid at the time. Have only been chasing DX for like the last 2 solar cycles, or maybe 3, I guess closer to 3. And I enjoy the heck out of it. And the only DXpedition I've been to is Joe's house to operate W1AW/8. So that's been it. So anyway, a well-qualified group. And any of you who have followed the first podcast, you know that I am the DX mentor, which means I'm not the guru, but I'm the mentor, but I have the gurus with me. And that's the whole purpose, is to try to continue to peel this onion until we're all learning just a tremendous amount. So I'm excited about today. So what I'd like to start a little bit, Mike, with you as being the DX historian, let's say, is how did this whole thing get started? I mean, we've got, DXpedition spending upwards of $1 million now to go to remote places that no man should ever really want to go to, and a lot of money and equipment and antennas and all those things, and it's all because of this DXCC program. So how did it get started?
It got started because when radio started, you couldn't talk or hear things very far away, and as technology improved, you could talk longer and longer distances. Hams in particular liked to measure their achievements against other hams, and they wanted a yardstick by which to measure their achievements. How do we tell who's worked the most of anything? So the DXCC program had its beginnings with an article in the October 1935 issue of QST. It was written by Clinton D. Soto, W1CBD. And the title of his article was called "How to Count Countries Worked, a New DX Scoring System." And he rambled on a bit. And the bottom line, that the crux of this whole program is, and this is a quote from his article, each discrete geographical or political entity is considered to be a country. And that one sentence is the ground zero of the DXCC program. The ARRL collaborated with mapping experts, National Geographic, people who geography experts, and in in January of 1937, they came out with their first country list. It was published in January 37 QST. It had 251 countries. And then in September of 1937, they introduced the DXCC Award, DX Century Club, for working 100 countries. It didn't take long. November of 1937, they published the first DXCC list. There were 5 members. The very first one to work all 100 countries, or to work over 100 countries, was Frank Lucas, WHCRA, in Cannonsburg, Pennsylvania. And he came in with a total of 112 countries. A year later, and note that's W8, and he's in Pennsylvania. Western Pennsylvania was in 8-land in those days. A year later, they had a whopping 29 members who had worked over 100 countries, and WHCRA was still top of the heap. He had 120 then. And the program continued with some minor changes until World War II, when everything was shut down. We were shut down by an announcement by the FCC on Pearl Harbor Day, and on December 7th, 1941, when all amateur radio activity had to stop.
Wow. So I know my dad had a real interest in it before the war. And then when he came back, that's when he got licensed. So I can remember him talking about that. One thing I've always been a little curious about, and it may be on the scope of this, but Bernie, I hear, we talk about countries and we talk about entities, and I kind of intermingle the two, but they really aren't the same thing, right?
Actually, really, they are. As far as the DXCC award goes, it was always called countries, at least from the beginning. I think the entities word came into play sometime just before the DXCC 2000 rules were released, and that was in April of actually 1998. But that's kind of when the words went from country to entity.
Okay. So Joe, I know he mentioned Canal Zone. I know you've been DXing for a while. I have Canal Zone. I have East Germany. I mean, there's countries we've confirmed that don't exist anymore. And I've always found that to be the interesting part of this. It's like we used to have Yugoslavia and Czechoslovakia, and now there's, other countries in their place. So I know you must have a number of them that don't exist anymore.
Yes, but you guys got one on me there, because I have never worked the old Canal Zone. I don't know where I was at. I guess I was roving down the garden or disking the field, but I never worked that old Canal Zone. So Bernie, I always thought that a country was like Japan, Germany, Uruguay, and an entity I always thought would be considered to be an uninhabited island. Do I really have that wrong?
I think so. I at least I think most DXers were calling them countries up until probably the late 90s. I don't remember hearing entities prior to that, but it may be.
So Mike, I know that there's always suggestions about adding countries and deleting countries. Is that also things that you guys have to look at on the advisory committee?
It is from time to time. There has not been any of that since I've been a member. And whether it's called a country or an entity, I think it's just a term that's used. Any of us who were chasing DX years ago, they're still countries.
Yeah.
Hawaii is a country. American Samoa is a country. And you may call it whatever you want, but and I don't think that's really important.
No, okay. So the other thing you mentioned was the honor roll. So can you talk a little bit about what that means?
Yes. Now that didn't start until after World War II. We started up November 15th, 1945, we were authorized to get back on the air. And the League made their first announcement in December 45. And then February 1947, they published a new DXCC list, had 257 countries. And they said, we're starting completely over with DXCC. They threw out everything from before the war. And then in November in 1947, they decided we should recognize the top 10 DXers. The 10 DXers with the highest country count. And in their first listing, Charlie Mellon, W1FH, was top of the honor roll with 168 countries. There were 257 on the list. The top man had only worked 168. Now, and of course, it's still the top 10, but there are thousands and thousands of people who have worked all the countries, and even more who have worked all -1. That would be me. I still need North Korea. So the honor roll, even though it still recognizes the top 10 numerically, it now includes thousands and thousands of people. But initially it was just 10 people.
So we're at what, 300? Are we at 342 now? Is that right?
340.
340. So if you have
340.
330 confirmed or more, you're on the honor roll.
331. You
Oh,
have
yeah,
to
that's
need
right.
less than 10.
Yes, okay. And Bernie, I think you were holding up a list, but it wasn't getting in focus on the
I
camera.
was holding up the post-war country lists that Mike was just mentioning.
And you know, it is interesting to me that one thing we touched on last podcast was the human side of DXing. You know, the different individuals that have gone to countries and left equipment behind, or they'll take money and supplies for schools or hospitals and such. It's also interesting to me how much geopolitical stuff enters into this, because we're all curious, like, okay, is this going to be a new country? And if it gets approved by and it gets selfish because we're less concerned about the people perhaps, and more like, when's this going to get approved? But it does really get you focused on what's going on, right? So to me, that's always kind of a fun part of it. There's a few head scratchers on the list, but for the most part, I think it's pretty easy. I kind of thought entities were, I know if you look at the CQ list, there's a few extra things on the CQ list that are not on the DXCC list. And I'd always thought that CQ used the word entity to be the DXCC list plus those 8 or 9. So that was always kind of my, but clearly it really doesn't matter. I get that, but I just kind of wanted to try to get clarification.
So what do they have listed as those entities, Bill? Do you recall?
I don't.
They have some of the Italian islands that are closer to Africa than they are to Italy. I can't come up with the names of them off the top of my head.
Yeah, there's 7. I think there's 7 countries that are listed, and they're from the Worked All Europe list. I don't know that I can name them all, but African Italy is one of them. Another one is Turkey. There's 2 Turkeys they count.
Yeah, the Asian and European.
Bear Island, which is part of Svalbard.
That's right. Okay.
There's one 4U1 VIC is another one. Boy, I can't remember. I don't do the DX marathon, the CQ DX marathon, but it's part of their award.
Right. Yeah. So we'll be talking about the DX marathon and the CQ stuff here in 2 weeks. But I do know for me, when my spotting alarm goes off and one of those entities, so to speak, is listed, I always pause, like, well, that's not Italy. Oh yeah, that's that extra island in the Mediterranean there. So sometimes you have to stop. So we were kind of telling a funny story before we got started about endorsements, and it kind of centered around Joe. Joe had worked a gazillion countries, but never applied for anything. And then the last few years, he decided, hey, I'd like to kind of get this documented and get it in. So all of a sudden, he's got honor roll everywhere, and he's got, you know, all this other stuff. And the one I kind of chuckled at was the 160-meter award, because he had a visiting card checker who reviewed the 160-meter cards and said, boy, you're at like 85 or something. And Joe, oh, wait a minute, let me go get another box of cards. He brought those in, and all of a sudden he's at 130 or something. So Joe, overall, though, I know you've got a lot of, and it's very recent, you've had a lot of endorsements and stuff. Does that, what is an endorsement, and does that kind of give you a kick in this whole Chase and DX thing?
Well, I guess originally I never did really care, because I was sort of playing a game with myself, try to work all the states on all the bands, then start working the countries. And I had all this accumulated, but I just never did do anything with it. And then all my friends would, like you guys, would be talking about it, and here a little old me, I didn't have any of them. So I thought, well, before I pass away, I need to get all these so my family can throw it all in the dumpster, right? Excuse me. So I started working on them. So I got the honor roll, and I got all bands, DXCC on all bands, and I just went on down the list. And I tell you, a guy that was really helpful in a lot of this was Jose in for BAA. And he just happens to live about an hour from me. I never met the guy. I've only emailed and had him on the phone, but he had really been a big help. So it's a good feeling to have these awards hanging on the wall. So when other hams come in, and particularly newer hams, you know, then they can say, well, look, this guy's got a lot of awards. He's been around. Maybe we ought to follow in his footsteps. So yeah, it's just a good feeling. Don't you guys feel the same way?
I will confess to obsessing about the paper chase and the cards and the awards. I mark off every little thing on my tick sheets, and I get pretty geeky about that.
Yes.
So the funny thing to me, now that I look back, I can remember just having sheets and sheets and sheets of things where I'm tracking, you know, and the ARL would give you these sheets you could get, and you had to mark them, and where's the QSL card, and what did I send in, and what didn't I send in, and what do I need, and what's my count. And now it's, yeah, just like that.
Yep.
So it's so much nicer now to have, you know, logbooks that kind of track all that for you. And sometimes it's kind of like contests when they have dupe sheets. I really don't know how we ever did a contest by hand. I just, now that you look at it, it's like, that's crazy. This is great stuff. So the DXCC challenge is one that I do nothing about. And I had sent all these cards in through my checker and stuff like that. And they came back and said, hey, you know, you're at whatever it was at, you know, 1,580 on DXCC challenge. You should apply for this. And I thought, I don't even know what this is. And man, what a great kept secret that is. That alone and the CQ marathon has probably motivated me more to stay on the air regularly just to fill slots. So I've got a loaded question for Bernie, but I'll ask Mike. Have you been? Do you obviously, do you follow the challenge? And I thought so.
I do now. I remember it came out in 2000, and I think the main reason was, as I mentioned, there are thousands of guys on the honor roll. There were so many guys that had worked everything, and they wanted something else to chase. So they came up with the idea, well, just chase everything on every band. In the earlier days, a proper DXer would work an expedition once or twice. You work them once, and then, well, maybe you work them on another band or mode just in case you're not in the log. And if you did any more than that, you were considered to be a DX hog. That was bad form. And then now they come up with the DXCC challenge. You work everything on every band. I was already on the honor roll then. I looked at that and says, oh, that's stupid. I'm not going to bother with that. And, you know, 10 years later, enough people are talking about it. I finally figured, okay, I'll go look and see what I've got. And, like you, I was around 1,500. I I applied all my logbook of the world credits. I looked through all my cards. I had 500 or 600 cards. At that time, N4MM was the closest card checker to me. I called him up, says, John, I got about 600 cards. You want to check them? He says, I'm not going to do it while you wait. You bring them to me, you come back a week later. So I took the cards over there with a case of beer and dropped them off, and went back a week later. And now I'm at just over 2,900 on the challenge. I'll never catch up to Bernie or the big boys in the 3,000 club, but I do enjoy it. My most recent one was FT8WW on 30 meters. That was my only challenge point since last summer when I got a few on 6. So yeah, I chase it.
I feel so privileged. I don't have these problems. So when you're at 1,500 or 1,700, you're still working everything. So I don't go a year without adding a band slot. So,
and that's exciting, isn't it?
It is. It
There's
really
always
is.
something new.
So the Mr. W3UR, I think he's in the 3,000 plus. Is that right?
Well,
Bernie's a big boy.
He's
Yeah.
a big boy.
I was at the top of the honor roll, or very close to it. And I heard an old friend of mine, W4DR, on the air, and we got to talking. And I said, "Look, Bob, what do you do to keep active? I love DXing. I like working DX. I like breaking pileups. I like DXing, and I've worked them all except maybe one or two." And he goes, "Well, I work everything on every band on every mode." And I thought to myself, nah, I don't want to do that, but I want to work it at least once on every band. So I started in serious mode probably around 1988.
Wow.
And I've been chasing them ever since on all the bands. And then when they started the award, I was like, not near the top, but I was definitely well on my way. And I'm now at 3,174 worked out of a possible 3,400.
Wow.
My last new one was also FT8WW on 30 meters. So,
Wow.
and there's still a few more that band slots for me for Crozet if they get on the right bands.
So Joe, I don't know if you're doing the challenge or if this whole conversation has challenged you to do the challenge.
Well, I think that's it. It has challenged me maybe to do it, but I'm not like you guys. I have not messed with it. And like Mike, I need to go and look up and see where I really do stand. I might have 30 or 40. I don't know.
Oh, I'll bet you have 1,000 either between LOTW and QSL cards or more already, Joe. You've been doing it so long.
Yeah. I just need to, there's so many things about ham radio that we can get into. And this is just another facet. And that's what always fascinates me about ham radio. No matter what the guy or girl is interested in, it seems like ham radio has got a slot for them. And that's what always seemed so good and entertaining to me. There's always something to do. So I'll have to take you guys' advice and check that out.
So the other topic that this leads us really well into is the whole application process, right? So I'm an aspiring DXer. I've got, a couple of 100 QSL cards. The question would be, what do I do? And I can remember that my very first submission to the league, and we didn't have LOTW yet. So I bound up a box of cards. I insured them, although I don't know why I would have insured them because the odds of, of getting, but anyway, I insured them. I put the return letter in there and completely filled everything out and signed it and put a check, ship it off to Newington. And then coincidentally, about 10 days later, maybe 2 weeks, we're in the living room and my wife, the phone rings and she comes in and says, there's some ham on the phone for you. His name is Don Search. And I'm telling you, I was ready. I don't know how, if I had a weak heart, I'd have ended it right there, because when the director, and I'm not sure what the official title is, but when Don called you, there was something going on. He didn't call you up just to say, hey, these are so pretty. I'm so glad you sent them. Right. So he said to me, and I was KB8DF at the time, he said, were you ever KB8DF stroke C6 or VP9? And I said, gosh, no. Okay. Hey, someone claimed your call as a VP9 and I got investigated, and I don't show any, and that's it. It had nothing to do with my submission or anything, but I was like shaking. It's like, oh my God, what does he want? And so maybe we'll start with Mike a little bit historically. How would someone who's listening now, if they want to get this DXCC, their first 100, or maybe in Joe's case, they've got a bunch, what is the process?
Well, historically, one would do exactly what you did, is you fill out the paperwork and you send it to Newington, and you can still do that. The forms are available on the ARRL website. You fill them out. Please fill them out neatly and carefully so the guys can read them, and you ship them off to Newington. There is a second way, also with paper cards. It's called the online application, where you type your QSO information into a form that is on the ARRL's servers. All the information is typed directly into their servers. You put your credit card in your credit card slot on your machine to pay for the award, and you print out the application and record sheets that list all your QSOs, and then you take that and your cards to your local DXCC card checker. There's also a list of those on the ARRL website. The card checker checks your cards to make sure that your cards and your application match. And then he gives you your cards back and he mails your application into Newington. They receive the application and they look at it and they see the card checker is signed off on it, and they just push a few buttons on their computer and your award goes through. And then you mentioned Logbook of the World, but you asked about paper cards, so let's stick with that for now, I guess. Okay. But that's the way it works.
There's always been two things that have intrigued me, or as a young ham. I can remember when I first got my ticket, I didn't find out from the FCC. I found out from the little print shop down in Texas, right?
Yep.
You get this thing ordered. It was like, oh, here's what and the other one was the amount of time it took to ship a box of cards and then get them back seemed like forever, because some of those cards are multi-cards, right? So you need some of them for your next application, and you're just praying they get back. So Bernie, he mentioned card checker. What is a card checker, and how does a person become a card checker?
A card checker is someone that is accredited by the ARRL. Usually there's, I think if I remember right, for certain size clubs over 25 members. You can have a club with one?
No, you could be appointed by your division director, your section manager, or a DX specialty club. Has to be a DX club that's officially recognized by the league as being a special service club where their focus is DX. The appointments are approved by the division director. You have to be a DXer with at least 150 confirmed. And you have to be well known by the people appointing you. They have to be able to vouch for you. They say, yes, this is a good guy. We can trust him to do things properly.
And to get your cards checked by a for 160 meters, you have to have someone who has the 160 meter DXCC.
They've recently changed that. So now if a card checker does not have a 160 DXCC, he fills out a little form, says, I'm not a 160 DXCC holder, but I checked these anyway, so please check them over again. So that's the way the rule stands as of today.
Okay. So I'll go back to Bernie for a second. When you say card checker, what are they looking at? It's pretty. And then secondly, what makes 160 different?
Well, 160 meters, they're mostly looking for that someone didn't take a 17 meter QSO that says 18 megahertz and put a dot in the middle of it to make it say 1.8 megahertz. That's the biggest thing that they're looking for there. What was the other question?
What are they when they check a QSL? What are they looking?
What are they looking for? Yeah, they are looking for to make sure certain things are on the back of the QSL card. That being your call sign, the full date, the month, day, year. I believe the time, the band, the mode. They're not looking for a signal report, although that's what it does take. You do have to have some kind of exchange of information for a contact account. They're also looking for on the front or somewhere on the card, the call sign of the DX station and the country name of the DXCC entity or country. I think that's everything that they're looking for, right, Mike?
Yes.
Okay.
Yes.
And they want to make sure that it's authentic.
Yes. You want to make sure the information on the card matches the information in the award application. And what you mentioned about a 17 meter or an 18 megahertz QSO with the added decimal point, I have seen that.
Really?
Yes, I have.
So
And the guy didn't even do a good job trying to disguise it. I could have seen that without my glasses on.
So
Well, the other one I always wondered about is if I give you a card where I worked Fiji on 60 meters and it was, 4 p.m. from the East Coast, it's like, I don't think so, pal. Yeah.
Well, no, that's another thing about this. This contact happened at high noon at the guy's location. For the 160 contacts, they ask us to write in the GMT time of the QSO on the application. The time is not a part of the time is not recorded with the contacts. It's just the date, the band, and the mode is the information they need to, and that's to let you know which DXCC award it applies to. And then the date for the expeditions, they have a database that tells with what dates certain call signs were active from which countries, so they can check to see if it's valid against that.
Okay, Joe, I think I talked over you. Sorry about that.
no, I because I wanted to get these awards, so I load up all my QSL cards, filled out the paperwork, took the cards to the card checker, and so here was one card and so he calls me up and he says, "Well, your call is not even listed on there."
Oh, yeah.
Oh, I see that. Yeah, it's blank.
Yeah. So then he calls back later, and this guy who was a WA2, AA2, I guess, I'm looking at it backwards, he put WB2.
Oh, good grief.
So that was a good reason, I think Bill said earlier, to work multiple peoples in each state, in each country. And then this never caught none of them caught my eye, but the scribbling on my call letter, he would not accept that because he didn't know if that guy made a mistake or if I was trying to forge it.
Yep.
None of that ever entered my mind. And I took the cards down. So then when I took the next batch down for whatever I was working on, then being a little smarter, I went through them to be sure that they had my call, they wasn't scribbled, and that the time is right. Because working a guy on 160 from Asia at 12 o'clock noon, that's just not going to happen. So the whole process was extremely interesting to me, how we really need to be sure that we all fill out our cards properly so that when we send them to the person that's requesting them, that they're filled out right so he or she can get an award.
Right.
Yeah, so Dave Vest, KDV, is a local card checker that is in our club that I use a lot. He gave a presentation one time talking about a meeting that occurred at the Marriott between, and I don't remember, maybe somebody that was on 4W and somebody from Pennsylvania, and they basically had a napkin, but he had his log with him, so he filled it out and he signed it, and did everything they needed, and then Dave was there and looked at it and said, "Yep, this is legit. Off we go." And they were so it doesn't take a formal QSL card, right? It's just
Yeah,
No, it doesn't.
no, so just an acknowledgement of the but when I talked to Don Search again, I said, "I'm telling you, I work Vietnam. Isn't that good enough? I was a Boy Scout." So I can't always get there. So one of the other things that's a little tangential maybe, but it's something I've always been curious about. And I brought this up to Joe because he's been on Midway and Swains, and so I'm always curious, how do we know that these guys going to Bouvet are actually on Bouvet and they're not sitting in the boat just off the island? I mean, there's got to be documentation or something, right? So, and one neat thing that Glenn Johnson, W0GJ, does is a presentation on the NCDXF rock collection, where people have brought rocks and sand and pebbles from different places. I don't think sending the application in with rocks from Bouvet is adequate, but I am curious, what does it take that I know, or not that I know, how does the ARL know that you really are sitting off the coast at Bouvet and not sitting off the coast? And anyone that can.
So the ARL has a list that they do not publish of countries that they're looking for documentation of some sort. Now, they're not going to request documentation for W's and DL's and JA's. They're looking for the more difficult countries, and they've got a list, and they know what it is, and they look at that list when someone says we're going here or we went here, and then they will ask the de-expeditioner to submit all the documents that they have that they think will help make them count for DXCC, such as, we would like to see a copy of your license. That's pretty much a done. I mean, that's number one. That there's no getting around that. They may want to see your plane tickets or your boat manifest or whatever. They may want to see a copy of your passport with that stamp on it for that certain country. They may want to see photos of you in front of something from that country that is very unique. There are other things, I won't go into all of them, but they do a real good background check to make sure you were where you said you were. And I think they've been accurate most of the time. There's been a few that they've come back later and they realized, whoops, this one got through. And we won't mention anybody's call sign, but Romeo, Romeo, wherefore?
Bernie, would they do that for the top 25, the top 25 or top 50?
Oh, it's more, I'm sure it's over 100 that they need some kind of documentation for. Yes.
Because some of them I have on, you're right on target. That is exactly what they asked us for. Yeah, picture of the hotel.
Yeah, and it's not, they will never publish that list because they don't want people to know how far, like, could I cheat on, if I can't cheat on those 160 that are on that list, can I go to, the next rarest one that's not on the list? They're not going to tell you.
Very cool. Interesting.
I also say, since we're talking about the subject, the ARRL is, when they get the documentation, they will not release it to anyone else. It is their copy, and they will not release it to anyone.
As it should be.
Yes.
Yeah.
Absolutely.
Yes.
Wow.
They can be trusted with your documentation.
Very interesting. I've always thought that in all the things the league does, to me, there's at least two solid reasons that every ham should be a member. Certainly two solid reasons if you're interested in DX. And one is to be a full participant in the DXCC program. The second is for the Spectrum Defense Fund. If nothing else,
Yes.
right? The fact that those two, with the group that's talking here and the people hopefully listening to us, that would be two reasons. And I know from time to time, depending on who you talk to, there's criticisms of everything, right? But those two things to me really is what keeps the league an important component of everything we're doing. But the other thing, though, and I maybe ask all of you to comment, is the impact that Logbook of the World has had. Mike, do you want to kind of explain what Logbook of the World is? And secondly, one point I want to make sure we don't miss is you do not have to be a member of the league to use Logbook of the World, right? At least to upload to it. So
That's
the rest
correct.
of us can benefit of your.
Yes.
So what is LOTW?
So Logbook of the World has really cut into my business as a card checker. Oh, I used to do 4,000 or 5,000 cards a year. Okay. Anyway, it started. Logbook of the World is an electronic filing system. It's a record of QSOs. It started, when did it start? 2003. There are well over 1 billion QSOs stored in Logbook of the World. Hams from anywhere in the world may upload their log in a very specific digitally signed format. And QSOs that match, QSOs that result in QSLs, may be used for the ARRL awards and a couple of the CQ awards, Work Dull Zones and WPX. It is a very, very quick and very inexpensive way to confirm a contact. Instead of having to put something in the mail and wait for a couple of months and hope that you were in the log, you can often get confirmation even from a DX contact within a day or less. And let me just, you said something that I thought was very important a minute ago about the league. Spectrum Defense is absolutely vital. Without the league, we probably wouldn't have bands to operate on. And people do complain about them. And I think that's good, because no organization is perfect, and any organization can benefit from change. But it's easier to change an organization from the inside, from the outside. So if you don't like something that's going on, get active and work to change it from within. And hopefully that will be a change for the better, and we'll all benefit from it.
Okay. Joe, what has been your experience with LOTW? Because I know you've been ramping up over the last couple of years. So
Yeah, I've used it a lot to apply for all these awards. Like Mike says, it is just so simple, rather than taking the time to fill out a QSL card, mailing it around the world, and you finally get it back 6 or 12 months later. But at LOTW, you can do this whole procedure from home and do it in just a few minutes. I use it every day. I upload depending on how many queues I'm making, but I'll upload 2 or 3 times a day, 30, 40, maybe at a time. But I really like LOTW. But to get onto it, it seems like you need a little help. And I've had several people, including Bill here, to help me navigate through it. It just seems like it ought to be a little simpler, but I'm not an IT guy. But it looks like the league, in all fairness, could do a better job of simplifying all these processes. But maybe it's just me, Bill.
no, I don't think it's you, but
It's not.
But I will say, being in IT, that if you're going to have something that's truly as locked down and secure as I hope that is, sometimes there's not
an easy way.
An easy, simple way to do it. So Bernie, the question I have is, there is another organization or group that allows you to upload upload QSOs, and then you can create an online QSL card and you can kind of exchange QSL cards that way. Do you ever see LOTW getting to a point where there is a way to exchange graphical images of cards, let's say, inside the database or inside the LOTW system?
Yeah, I don't know if that's part of the new plan for the future rollout of LOTW, but it certainly can be done, and I wouldn't think it'd be that difficult to do. I want to back up just for a second, if I could, for the on the ARRL membership thing, not just ARRL, because I'm sure you're eventually going to get people from other countries that are going to be listening to your podcast. I would say, if possible, everybody should be a member of their national society, because they do stuff that the individual can't do. They meet at the ITU. They meet with the people that make the rules and regulations for our wonderful hobby. And like Mike said, as far as ARRL is concerned, we have here in the United States, we can elect who we want to be our division directors. And, if you don't like something, tell the director, say, look, I don't like it this way. And you're not going to get everything that you want. That's not the way it's going to work. But if enough people tell their directors, hey, we want to save 160 meters, or we want this or that. If enough people do that, it's going to be, the procedure that they go through.
Okay, great. So I think as far as the DXCC program, I think we've done a really good job of covering things. So is there anything I left out that you think I should have stressed or even mentioned? Oh, see, that's good.
I think we covered it pretty well. And like you said, when the questions will come and as they come in, and then they get answered next time.
Yeah.
I think one of the questions you might get from some of your listeners is about the criteria for the DXCC. Why is it a country? And I think if you look at the criteria, there's several different ways that a country becomes a country on the DXCC list, whether it be a political entity, and there's three or four different ways that you can get on that list, or a trying to think of a geographical separation country. There's criteria for that, and the DXCC program, they follow those rules. And yeah, I just want to make sure that they know there is a criteria for new country. And for example, a lot of people don't like the idea of Scarborough Reef being a DXCC entity. It was put on the list, and a lot of people did not like it. It met the criteria at the time. And immediately after, they came up with a new criteria for any new DXCC entities. It doesn't affect the old ones, the grandfathered ones, the ones that are already on the list. And there will never, ever be another Scarborough Reef type of country because of that 100 meters above sea level at high tide, yada, yada, yada. I don't know the exact rule, but my point is there'll never be another Scarborough Reef. And the other point I want to make is it's going to stay a country until it no longer meets the DXCC criteria. Once it no longer meets the criteria, it will be deleted.
Oh, but once it no longer meets the criteria that were in place when it was added.
Correct. Yes.
Okay.
Thank you.
All right. And if I recall, the Scarborough Reef issue was at high tide, it was literally a little rocks above ground that they built a 2x4 structure on and then sat on top of that, right? So,
Correct.
which to me was dangerous as could be. My goodness.
Correct.
Right.
Okay. Joe? Any
Well,
thoughts about
so-
any? I'm sorry, dead silence. I surprised you. Any thoughts about what we talked about?
Well,
Or?
I got involved in Bernie's talk there. No, I'm good. I think we put on a good presentation. This has been fun as always. I enjoy doing all this, these types of things. So let's do it again.
So the last thing I in my mind, I like to ask when we're done on every podcast, no matter what the topic is, what do you find exciting about DX? Because what I'm really hoping is we're getting folks on here that have, maybe they've worked 30 or 40 countries and now it's like, yeah, maybe I'll take a look at this. So I'm just going to go clockwise on my screen. Bernie, what do you see as exciting about DX?
Oh, I think for me, it's the magic. It's the magic of calling CQ or answering a station and not knowing who's going to come back to you, where they are, what they do for a living, what kind of equipment they have, and then afterwards getting a QSL card or a confirmation from that station and telling my friends, whether it be family or ham radio friends, oh man, you won't believe it. Today I worked a guy in Baku, Azerbaijan.
Very cool. Mike?
It's kind of the same for me. I like to tune the bands, see what's out there. You never know what you're going to hear. I mean, we've been doing this for all of us have been doing this for years. We have a real good idea when the band is supposed to be open to different parts of the world, but you're surprised by what you hear. Some things you don't expect. You might hear a guy in Mongolia, Azerbaijan, and I enjoy that, just listening to what's out there, because you never know what it's going to be. And I think more than anything, I enjoy the friendships that I've made with people from around the world. For me, it's all about fellowship. The friends I've made on the air and at ham radio conventions, I enjoy that actually more than all the technical aspects of the thing. It's outside of ham radio in my professional life, everybody I knew was identified by what instrument they played. And you get on the radio and you meet people from all walks of life, people who do everything. And as a DXer, many of these people are in foreign countries, which makes them even more interesting. And I enjoy that.
Joe?
These guys have pretty much said it all. But I like the challenge of it. I get up every morning. I'm big into the gray line, the sunrise and sunset, and the challenge of hearing some guy or girl in Japan and being able to work them with the equipment that we have and that we put together, and that within a split second, these people answer back. And that just, even today, after all these years, it still amazes me how this all comes together. And then it's good bragging rights when you go to the club meeting and you get around your friends and you say, hey, I worked Bernie over here in North Korea the other day. Did you get him? No, I didn't get him. So I just love it. I'm just obsessed with ham radio. No question about it.
So what I find funny about DXers is that, and Joe maybe 15 years ago said, you want to try to get Bernie to come to this convention? Yeah, but I don't know him, blah, blah. Just call him. The worst he can do is say no. But what I have found is, DXers as a group, club meetings, they all just kind of sit there, maybe a couple clusters around, and no one's really interacting. And it's really funny. And yet, if you go up to any one of them and say, I'm really having trouble operating split or something, right, on this particular radio, I understand. 9 times out of 10, come on over, come to my house, sit down, let me show you how it is. So it is a very social thing. And it's funny because the way I met Bernie was literally a phone call saying, hey, here's who I am. You don't know me from Adam, but we have this thing going on, and here's the people we're associated. Would you consider coming over? We worked that out. I met K0MD in line at Sedco down in Tennessee. Who are you? Oh, I've heard of you. And we chatted a little bit, and he invited me to an event at Dayton Hamvention where I literally was standing talking to Mike. Oh, who are you? And here's who I am. And we struck up a conversation that way. And then I think maybe 30 years ago, Joe bailed me out. So that's how I met him. So anyway, I can't tell you all how much I personally appreciate you being part of this. If it's okay, if anyone has questions, they can access you through qrz.com. And at the end here, there's a little message about how to get a hold of me or the podcast. But you guys have taken personal time, and I can't tell you how much I appreciate it. So when I do get to P5, you'll be at the top of the list, and I'll make sure you're in the log before anybody else is. So thank you so much, and look forward to talking to you guys in the future.
All right. Thanks, Bill. See ya.
Thanks,
Thanks.
Bill.
73 OM.
Yeah.
Well done.
I love
See you in the pile-up.
See you in the pile-ups is right.
I hope you found that as interesting as I did, and I hope that it answered many of your questions about the DXCC program, applying for awards, and LOTW. That was my second time going through and editing it, and I got to tell you, I learn more stuff every time. Thank you for joining us on this edition of the DX Mentor. I would love to thank our sponsors, ICOM America, the Daily DX, DX Engineering, and the Southwest Ohio DX Association. You won't find anyone more committed to DX than these sponsors. I would also like to thank our guests today, Mike, W0VTT, Bernie, W3UR, and Joe, W8GEX. I would love to have your feedback, answer your questions, and provide help with any DX or amateur radio issues that you may have. If you need clarification on something or you just have a question, please email me at thedxmentor@gmail.com. I would especially like to thank you, our listeners and viewers. Without you, there would be no reason to do this. Please drop me a line if you've achieved an all-time new one, received recognition, or you have a DX event that you would like us to mention. We would be happy to do that. If you're enjoying these DX Mentor episodes, please hit the subscribe button. If you want to follow us to get updates on future YouTube and podcast episodes, as well as DX events and DXpeditions, just join the DX Mentor Facebook group. 7-3 for this episode, and thanks to my ex-whale Karen for her love and support. I hope to see you in the pile-ups.